One driver for many voters is Issue 1, the complicated amendment to overhaul the redistricting process used for the first time in 2021. The Ohio Redistricting Commission approved maps that were ruled unconstitutionally gerrymandered 7 times by the Ohio Supreme Court's 3 Democrats and Republican Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor. A federal court allowed the maps to be used in 2022, and after O'Connor retired that year, the maps were tweaked and then unanimously approved earlier this year. I'll be talking to both the yes and no campaigns. This week, Maureen O'Connor, the author of the amendment. The amendment requires maps to be drawn based on a proportionality formula that corresponds closely with the results of the last 6 statewide elections. So if voters approve Issue 1, that would mean the results of statewide elections in 2018, 2020, and 2022 would be factored in. So right now, without factoring in the results of 2024, because we don't know those yet, there will be a breakdown of about 57% Republican districts, 43% Democratic districts. Is my math correct?
I don't know. I don't do the math for that kind of thing because it doesn't matter to me how the chips fall. Just so it's a fair process in the map drawing. And that's one of the most important things that I can communicate about this, is that this is not an effort, like many people deceptively are saying, to turn Ohio blue. That is not the intent of this amendment. It is to have citizens draw fair, representative voting districts for the State House and for Congress. And people are excited about this, and with good reason. And there's so many reasons why they are, and I'm sure we'll get into it in our conversation. But this proportionality that you mentioned is in the Constitution now. Okay, it just goes back 10 years. When we passed legislation in 15 and 18, the citizens, and by the way, those amendments were drafted by the legislature. They were not a citizens-initiated amendment. This one is. This is purely citizens. So when they were drafted in the current process, as in our Ohio Constitution now, they do mention this proportionality. And it was a factor in the 7 maps that we declared unconstitutional. And I'm going to give you an example, if I may. You're going to have districts that are going to lean right, red, and you're going to have districts that are going to lean Democrat, okay? And these are the districts we're talking about, the proportionality. In the districts that they wanted to tag as, and this is in the past, these gerrymandered maps, they wanted to tag as Democrat. It was 50.003 favor a Democrat, name or designation. 50.003. Now, to me, that's a toss-up. To anybody, that's a toss-up. Nope, that's in the D column, and that's going to meet the criteria. In the R column, there wasn't anything near the 50.003 that they had in the Democratic, column. So if that isn't an indicator that there's something wrong, then I don't know what is. I mean, there's many others, obviously. The way that amendment was written, both 15 and 18. But probably the most damning thing in our Constitution now is what I call the Trojan horse. It's the Redistricting Commission. It's the makeup of the Redistricting Commission that's embedded in the constitutional amendments. Nobody thought too much of it at the time. And why? Because there was a trust, exercise. We're going to trust these politicians that are populating the Redistricting Commission to do the right thing, to have integrity, to operate in good faith. All right? Silly us. The system's broken. It's broken because politicians occupy all seats in the Redistricting Commission, and politicians will, number one, preserve their own personal power and status in government, and they were also going to try and strengthen their party's presence, their party's power. And to do that, they gerrymander. Ohio's one of the 10 worst gerrymandered states in the country. Not a very noble distinction, but it's true. And I also want to be very clear. Gerrymandering is not just something done by Republicans and something done by, and not Democrats, because there's plenty of examples across the country where states that have a majority Democrats have, engaged in gerrymandering. So I call it an equal opportunity offender.
The commission that would draw these maps would start with a pool of 90 candidates, it'd be whittled down to 45, and then the 15 members would be selected from that pool. All of this involving a professional search firm that's screening these candidates.
Correct.
How do you find 90 people in Ohio, 30 each from both major parties and 30 unaffiliated voters, who want to participate in the redistricting process but who are not currently or formerly politicians, lobbyists, or people with connections to politics?
Other states have done it. And they've done it, by just having people apply. There will be an application process. There'll be an application to fill out, and that application will allow the volunteer, the citizens, to begin the process. All right. We have, almost 12 million people here in the state of Ohio. And I do believe that we're going to be able to come up with 15, 15, and 15, and then whittle that down to 5, 5, and 5. 5 R's, 5 D's, and 5 independents. I'm not concerned about that. And I'm not concerned about the quality of citizen that is going to step forward. This is going to be an opportunity unlike anything else we've ever had in Ohio for citizens to take charge of their government. We have a representative form of government, obviously, and we as citizens bestow our trust on the people that we elect. And this legislature has, and some statewide office holders, have time and time again thumbed their nose at the citizenry, did things that were contrary to the wishes of the people, and then don't respect how the people voted. And people are tired of it. They are tired of it. And this is an opportunity.
The Republicans, most of those who oppose this are Republicans, including some elected officials. They claim the amendment would require gerrymandering because of this proportionality formula. If you are drawing lines to ensure a certain number of Republican districts, a certain number of Democratic districts, isn't that gerrymandering?
Well, the definition of gerrymandering contains the word unfair. To draw districts that are favorites of, R's, D's, and a proportionality. I like to call it proportionality. And it is, the gerrymandering is doing that unfairly, okay? And also, there is no requirement that, what you said, 57-43 or something like that, okay. Those are guidelines, all right? They're not, you have to have, that proportion, that ratio. What those guidelines will tell us is if the districts are drawn in such a way that it totally exceeds the 57% and thereby, does not even approach the 43, that is an indicator that there's gerrymandering going on, okay? So that, to me, is the role of those numbers. You look back 6 years. Currently, you look back 10 years, all right? But it's the same process of identifying trends when you have citizens, voters, who obviously declare based on their primary participation. Now, I'm sure that your listeners know this, but the vast majority of registered voters in Ohio are independents. Okay, I think over 70% are independents. We always talk about R's and D's like they're the be-all and end-all as far as the control. Well, yeah, because those are the folks that are elected. So there's a lot of independents that participate, I would presume, in the in the voting for either an R or D. But there's so many that feel they don't have a choice because of gerrymandering.
The No on Campaign claims that out-of-state special interests want to create a commission that will have virtually unlimited power to spend Ohio's tax dollars with zero accountability to voters. I want to ask you about that, and I want to start with the idea of accountability. That seems to be at the root of why previous votes to create an independent commission to do redistricting did not pass in 2005 and 2012. So how do you address that concern about accountability when these commissioners are not elected officials?
Okay. Every basis to your question is rooted in the opposition's false narrative. All right, I want to start there. They talk about accountability. They talk about a blank check. They talk about all this nonsense that if they read the Constitution, they would see the parts, the paragraphs in our proposed amendment that address exactly what you're saying. Yes, there will be a 15-member commission. Now, as far as accountability, if someone is not doing their job, it says in the Constitution, they can be removed from the commission, all right? And the people they're working with will be the ones that say, hey, you're missing meetings, you're slacking off, and it's not fair, and we're going to vote you off the island, so to speak. And that is right there in the Constitution. So when they say there's no accountability, no way to get rid of them, they know they're lying. All right. And the next thing you talk about is, and by the way, they're only coming together to draw the maps. They're not going to be operating for 10 years. This is a very condensed period of time that they have to come up with a product, and that product is a map for both the General Assembly and Congress. So people have to understand that this is not just about who's in Columbus represented, but who's in Washington. And so they'll have a condensed period of time by which they are required to have met milestones in the process of getting to the maps. And when those maps are passed, and by the way, the whole process is transparent. If you want to talk about accountability, there is none now. There is no accountability under what we have currently in our Constitution. This operation, there will not be a conversation that takes place between the commissioners that is not in front of a camera, that people can't live stream, that people can't attend. Everything is going to be out in the open. When they're drawing the maps, the map makers will be doing this in front of a camera, so you can turn it on, and if you have insomnia, it will probably be a cure, I'm telling you. But I'm just saying that this is absolute nonsense. They know it's a lie for the accountability. They know it's a lie when they talk about a blank check. There is a process in the constitutional or the Constitution Amendment, and it talks about what the appropriation will be by the legislature to pay for this, okay? And there's a cap on it, all right? And yes, the commissioners will be paid when they are working per diem, okay? Just like any other commission that is set up for any purpose here in the state of Ohio, commissioners get paid. These commissioners will get on the lower rung of $125 a day, all right? Why did we put a pay? Well, obviously we want people that can afford to do this. In other words, they're going to have a resource coming in, all right? I didn't want people who literally can sit back and say, yeah, I can do that because I don't need the money. I don't need an income. I'm, of a certain socioeconomic status that I can do this. No, because we want demographics that are representative of the state of Ohio. That's also in the Constitution, geographically and for demographics. So basically, the people that are saying vote no are purposely misleading, lying about these questions that you've asked. If people would just read the amendment, they would see what I'm talking about. I sat down and we drafted this, and it took almost a year to come up with this. And people who were lawyers, who were experts in the field of representation, etc., both from within and outside of Ohio. This was not a fly-by-night organization, and It wasn't, the Democratic Party knocking on my door and saying, hey, Chief, have I got a job for you in your retirement? Not at all. Not at all. I spoke about doing this as I was winding down from the court. In fact, in the very first opinion that was authored by Justice Melody Stewart, I wrote a concurring opinion, and I reminded the citizens of Ohio, we have this wonderful opportunity in Ohio that only about 16 or 17 other states have, and that's to have citizens propose an amendment to our Constitution. Yes, it has to be proposed. Yes, it has to be voted on by the citizens of the state. Yes, they have to have the majority of yes votes. Now, that could have changed by that goofy amendment from August of last year, where the politicians tried to pull the rug out from underneath our citizens and bump that up to 60% approval rather than 50+1. Nobody fell for that. And, that's a testament to our citizens, absolutely.
I do want to ask you about the out-of-state claim. Citizens, not politicians, raised $23 million as of fundraising reports in August. Less than 16% of that came from Ohio. That's a lot of money to be coming in from out-of-state for this effort.
Okay, and I would like to remind everybody that these are maps that are being drawn not only for Columbus and the state of Ohio, but also for Congress in Washington, which affects our country. Democracy that affects our country. I like to say democracy does not stop at the borders of Ohio. Strengthening our democracy, strengthening the voice of the citizens does not stop. The interest in doing that does not stop at the border of Ohio with good cause. What's good for Ohio, what's good for the people of Ohio, what's good for our government in Ohio is good for this country.
If this passes, how can voters ensure that what they apparently want, which would be these fairer districts that are more representative, how can they be assured that this will happen? Because a lot of voters think they voted for that in 2015 and 2018.
And I would remind them, this is a citizens-initiated thing. This is not a group that has an agenda other than fair maps, representative maps, maps that reflect the citizens of Ohio and their voting, Previously, it was those amendments were drafted by people who had an agenda, and that agenda was to put party over people, to have a supermajority, which they have, and to exercise that authority with no regard to what the citizens want. And there's example after example of the legislature thinking, we know best, and citizens, you better listen to us. And we're going to put this constitutional amendment on, and we're going to fight against this constitutional amendment. And what happens? Let's go back to August, when the citizens soundly rejected, taking their right to vote for a constitutional amendment literally away by making it 60% rather than 50+1. What was the reaction of the politicians? This isn't over. We're going to bring it back. Okay? What? It's like somebody scolding children. You just wait, we're going to do this again, and by golly, that's insulting to the people of Ohio, and the people understand that. People in Ohio are smart.
How much of an effect do you expect the ballot board's language, the ballot summary that voters will see, will affect their vote? How much do you expect that
You mean
will be
the
impacted?
illegal, unconstitutional language that Frank LaRose drafted that purposely tries to sway the voters to vote no on this amendment? You mean that language? Yeah, I think it's bad. I think it's the worst ballot language I have ever seen in my career of 20 years on the Supreme Court and 4 years as lieutenant governor. It's atrocious. It's unconstitutional, and quite frankly, I find it reprehensible that the Secretary of State, the person who is supposed to oversee fair elections in this state, puts his thumb on the scale this way. And that's what he does, because they want you to vote no. They want you to look at that language and they want you to say, ooh, I don't want that. I'm going to vote no. Let me give you an example. The amendment says very clearly that what the commission will do will ban gerrymandering. The intent of this amendment is to ban gerrymandering. Frank LaRose and company has in the ballot language, that they hope that citizens will see when they walk into the booth or they're looking at the ballot at home, that, and this is what's written, that the commission will be required to gerrymander. That's a lie. I just can't tell you how false and dishonest and despicable. And actually, it was signed off on by the Supreme Court, which people are shocked about, absolutely shocked about that. Yes, it's difficult. We expected bad ballot language. Look what happened to the Reproductive Rights Amendment. They tried to put their thumb on the scale for that, to have citizens vote against it. Obviously, that didn't work, and I think the same result will happen this time. Citizens are offended when they're taken for fools, and that's what Frank LaRose and the opposition is counting on, that people are fools.
And again, we'll have the No on Issue 1 side next week, and we'll recap both sides in a later show.